You're smiling now. Joanne Berrigan, Realtor Auburn host, and because of the overwhelming support of Airbnb, we were able to change local ordinances in Auburn. The residential community is wonderful. People come to Auburn, they love it, they buy homes, they pay property tax. Please vote no on SB 593.
Any other speakers on this item? Okay. We have questions from the committee. Let's have a discussion. Senator Leyva, Senator Wachowski, and Senator Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, I have a variety of questions. First, I want to clarify what this actually is. A gentleman here talked about this helping homelessness. I thought that we were talking about online vacation rental businesses.
Well, my point is that people have attacked the home share environment to say that it exacerbates affordable housing. And my point is that these kinds of platforms don't really exacerbate the affordable housing problem we have in California. The problem preceded the home share, and it's a serious issue, and we should take it seriously. And this is a smokescreen, and it won't address the problem.
Well, homelessness is a very serious issue, but I don't think it belongs in this discussion because I think we're talking about online vacation business rentals. That's what Airbnb proposes to do or purports to do, correct?
And that's my point. That's my point.
Okay, very good. The other question I have is, the folks who are in opposition, if this bill were to pass and become law, they would, I don't see anything as the bill is written that they would no longer be able to open their homes and be part of the online vacation rental business. Senator McGuire?
You're absolutely correct, Senator Leyva. So this bill is simple. And one of the things that I really appreciate are we have so many taxpayers here today, and very grateful for that. And all this would do is switch the burden of paying the bed tax off of the homeowner to Airbnb. And in fact, it would remain legal. And the only area where would not be able to rent out units are where cities have made the decision that it's not a fit for them. And that's a local land use issue. And by the way, we're not weighing in on that today. We're simply focused twofold. One, collect the bed tax. Two, in communities that don't allow vacation rentals, they can't rent them. That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Did you want to answer?
I would have to, yes, I respectfully disagree with that characterization from the senator. It may come as a big surprise to everybody. I think, as you can hear from many of these folks, many cities across California, as well as across the country, are figuring out what to do about this emerging activity. In fact, in Sacramento, like many cities, the law is unclear. In many cities, it is prohibited, but cities are actively working on legislation to address that issue. Creating legislation that imposes fines on websites like ours because users are listing property in cities where it's technically illegal or the law is unclear is in fact the stated intent of this legislation. There are fines for failure to list, if platforms list units where the law is unclear or where there may be a violation of a planning code. That is a separate issue from a tax collection matter entirely. And it's a great concern for us and many at the table here.
Okay, and I understand that, and I see that, I do see that in the bill. The other question I have is, in the letter that Airbnb sent, requires websites like Airbnb to turn over unprecedented and broad swaths of sensitive user data to cities and counties across California each quarter. And I think what the bill says is the address of each residential unit that was offered, so you have to provide that, the total number of nights, and the amounts paid for the occupancy. So going to Senator Ross, some of his questions, he's left, but I think that's something you guys could probably do. I mean, you're a $13 billion company, so you maybe could hire a few people that could input that data. It's asking for the address. It's not asking for people's name or any sensitive information.
I would defer to others on this august panel who I think have addressed the principal issues here. I don't think it's a question of whether we could.
You're the Airbnb guy, right?
Sure, okay. I certainly am, but I think the principles involved here are critical, and that is when and how government can compel any private internet company to hand over user data and for what purpose. And in this purpose, generally we're not talking about counterterrorism, we're not talking about law enforcement issues, we're talking about compliance with planning and zoning regulations.
Right. But my point is, you guys could do that, and you could afford to do that.
They're doing it now in cities across this country.
Okay.
Respectfully, we are not handing over data
Well, hold
across this
on,
country, Senator.
Go ahead.
And that's good. I'm
Senator,
done. Thank you.
Senator Allen, Senator Mendoza, you had a question? Senator Whitekowski.
I've got a few questions.
Over here.
First of all, there seems to be just a lot of, I'm having a hard time I heard all the wonderful folks who came up and spoke. I'm having a really hard time seeing how this bill impacts individual home share folks, like the people who came up to speak. You know, it's a shift of the burden of tax collection. I get that. I think that that's exactly what happened with Amazon. Amazon for a long time tried to argue that it was not an appropriate place for them to be collecting sales tax. We ended up understanding that it was just impracticable on a mass level. I understand that everyone who's spoken today collects taxes and does the right thing, and I appreciate that too, as someone who came from local government who's now in the state government. But I also know from a practicality perspective that it makes a lot of sense, particularly given the strength of your platform, to be able to do it at your level, and I just am having a hard time seeing how that in and of itself will dramatically impact your ability to do business. Now, I do see and share, I think, and we had a long conversation about this yesterday, and I appreciate your time, David. My biggest concern does kind of rest on section C1, which I think Senator Roth raised earlier about the applicability of all sorts of zoning laws. Now, I've spoken to the author about this. It seems very clear to me that his intent, and I would argue that even the clear language of the bill as written, is all about those cities that have expressly prohibited vacation rentals as a matter of course. And so it should be relatively easy, particularly given the terms of C2, which require a cease and desist letter from the city and a 30 days notice. And maybe the author would be willing to up that to 45 days or 60 days or something along those lines. That might be a helpful change. That would give Airbnb notice so as to, so that, and they would, and apparently, at least from my reading of the bill, and, we've got some other attorneys here on the committee. I know you're a lawyer as well. It seems to me that every time the city wanted to shut down a particular potential provider, they would have to write a letter to Airbnb and ask them to take that person off of the portal. It seems to be a very carefully written bill that actually addresses a lot, in fact, all of the key concerns that I heard raised by the opposition. I just want to hear your response to that, because I'm having trouble understanding how this is going to destroy your business and the internet as we know it.
I wouldn't totally endorse that characterization, but I appreciate the conversation that we had. And I think the concern is if this bill or any like it create burdens for companies like ours to carry out an investigation to understand whether a particular listing or a particular user is in compliance with fill-in-the-blank laws, an HOA agreement, a local zoning ordinance, or simply take them off or face significant fines, it is a significant burden not only for us, but for many similarly situated internet companies. And we could simply, every time somebody asked us to do something, to take a listing down or to adjust the platform, we could comply with that, but that's not generally the way that internet companies interact with government. And local government and cities have robust tools on the land use enforcement side to enforce their ordinances. And, we respond to subpoenas, we pass through notices that we receive from one party to another, but putting the platform in the position of deciding either take a listing down or carry out an investigation or face significant penalties in tens of thousands of cities around the world or hundreds of them across California is significant.
And I appreciate that. I appreciate that, particularly when you bring up things like zoning and HOA. I don't get the impression that those sorts of situations are what the author had in mind when he was authoring this section of the bill. And so I guess my question for you is, I know you'd love not to have this bill at all. I understand that. But my understanding is that the author wrote that section only to address those cities that expressly and publicly have prohibited all of this type of home share activity. And I guess my question to you is, how could we write that section better, if at all? I mean, I've read it over a couple times, but I would assume the author would be interested in this conversation as well, to make sure that the only incidents in which you'd have to be vetting or policing properties within the context of this section of the bill would be just in the case of those cities, those properties that are in cities or jurisdictions that have expressly prohibited this type of activity altogether. That should be relatively simple. I understand, you got a lot of cities to worry about, but ultimately, if Healdsburg bans it, you get a listing from Healdsburg, immediately, okay, Healdsburg doesn't allow this kind of activity, we're not going to post this listing. No ifs, ands, or buts. It doesn't have anything to do with checking out the zoning code or making sure they paid their HOA on time or going to see that all the steps are ADA compliant. I'm talking about I'm seeing the author shaking his head. So how is this not getting you there? How is the language of this bill as currently written not getting there to the place where it would just apply to those properties and cities that have expressly banned the use of home share rentals altogether?
I want to be respectful of the committee's time and as well as answering your questions, Senator. We're, as a general matter, would love to continue these conversations with the sponsor's office or have these conversations with the sponsor's office.
Don't worry, you will.
And any others here. I'm sure we'll have that opportunity. I look forward to it. To that specific question, I think the bill as written creates penalties for platforms like ours for the activities of members of our community if we do not take down a listing that may be out of compliance with some particular local ordinance. And that is a significant concern for us and for many others in the industry.
Can I direct that question also to the author? Because and I will say, this is what bothers me the most about the bill, is this little section. I want to make sure that this doesn't end up being used as a nitpicky thing to jam up homeowners who are using this activity in the way that it's been intended. And I think that the way that you intend, or you agree that you'd like to see Airbnb used.
I, as a member of the Board of Supervisors, a year ago, expanded vacation rentals in Sonoma County. I voted as part of the Board of Supervisors majority to expand the use of vacation rentals in Sonoma County. And what I want to be cautious about is making this discussion pro-sharing economy or not. This discussion should be simple. Pay your tax, or in a city like Sausalito, for example, that does not allow vacation rentals because the city council, 5 members of that local community, made a decision locally, not at the state, locally, to ban them, and they can't rent in that community. And I will tell you, the technology is out there to simply not book in that zip code. That's it. There is no ulterior motive. We have allowed the same recourse. The 30-day letter that goes out is in every code enforcement rule in every city, in every county. There's 30 days to be able to correct a mishap. The bill is simple. It enforces local laws that are on the books adopted by city councils and Board of Supervisors. There is no ulterior motive. I can be blunt, and I've said that, I don't know, probably about 100 times over the last 3 weeks. Just pay the tax that is required in the local community, or don't book in the community that the city council has decided against it.
Okay, so my only comment about this to you from Airbnb is that I think you have a kind of a decision, a strategic decision to make. You can continue, and I don't know where the votes are either here or any other stage in this process. I'm gonna. I think you have to make a decision, I suppose, to just sort of oppose the language altogether, or work with the author to tighten it up to make sure that this, which I think is an absolutely legitimate concern, is addressed with regards to nitpicky HOA, individual zoning issues that I don't think that you're in a place to have to police. So I agree with that core concern. I think that right now, you're just opposing everything without a lot of specificity. And I would ask you to work with the author. I'm comfortable voting for this now, but I will say to the author that it's important to me, in terms of my continued support for this bill, that you work with Airbnb to the extent that they are willing to clean up that particular area of the bill, if
We have
possible.
offered, anytime they want to meet, we are willing to sit down. We'll sit down 6 a.m. or midnight, whatever works, at a coffee house or at,
Sure, you're
maybe an
House.
Airbnb property.
or we could do
more of a
a
nighttime guy.
host. Exactly,
Yeah, just pay your TOT.
exactly. We would love to have a robust conversation.
Okay, Senator Wachowski, Senator Mendoza, and Senator Roth.
I apologize for not being here for.
Yes, go ahead, Senator. Yeah.
Have you discussed the difference between electronic hosting and regular paper hosting? And you make a distinction because this is only for electronic, but other people in magazines, they have this opportunity to rent a B&B. And it may be against the local law.
Well, the only areas where they are against the law are specifically in cities, and I don't believe there are any counties. I think there are some counties that are silent on the issue, 3 of them to be correct. But there are cities that either have a bed tax ordinance on the books or cities that don't. But this is just related to vacation rentals.
So if there is a magazine that offers a vacation B&B, they're, under this bill, they're not required to collect the tax, or they're not subject to the fine if they don't remit the tax. That exists. I don't know if it's popular, but it
They
exists.
are required.
Let's say it's like Joe's Magazine for vacation rentals.
AAA.
By local law, they're actually supposed to remit their tax. So whether you have a vacation rental or you are the largest hotel on the planet, you have to pay your bed tax if you live or your business is located in either of the 431 cities that have them or the 55 out of 58 counties. And it doesn't distinguish versus online or brick and mortar.
You want the tax collector to answer the question?
Yeah,
Or the
tax, I'd
ex-tax
love to hear the
collector.
tax collectors.
Yeah, he's the guy who collects the money. Well, that's okay, yeah, we got to have answers.
Yes. The question of the transient occupancy tax, well, let's be clear, it's not a tax on the hotelier or the person who's renting the rooms. It is a tax on the transient. You pay it as part of your fee
Right.
when you use the hotel. It's like a sales tax. It's a pass-through down to local government. The question of the magazine that advertises these things, the difference is these aren't simply listings that are appearing in print. There's actually a financial connection between the internet company and the person renting the room. They're facilitating it. They're actually taking some funds. The magazine owner isn't. He's just getting the money for the ad. He's not facilitating the rental.
Yeah.
Does that clarify at all?
Well, then I guess, then the owner's not collecting the tax either, or,
The owner should be.
Okay.
The owner meaning the
Yes,
person
yeah.
who owns the room being rented.
The owner should be, yeah.
okay, there's no penalty for the homeowner. I mean, I think my colleague went through section C. It's Airbnb. If I'm violating my local ordinance under this bill, there's nothing that says you're bad, just nothing. It's just the hosting company will pay a fine, right?
Correct. So the way it currently works now, and if we use a rural county or urban county, is that if you have a home and you want to be able to rent it out on any online platform, you're supposed to pay your tax. And right now, that burden is on the homeowner. What this bill would do is take the burden off of the homeowner. So when you check out and you're about to book that house for the week in Sea Ranch, you'll pay whatever it costs for the week plus your tax. And then on a quarterly basis, as county tax collectors or Department of Finances and cities do, on a quarterly basis, that company then pays the bed tax.
Okay, so currently, there's nothing that prohibits the tax man here from going after these homeowners
And that's-
to collect that TOT.
You're absolutely correct with that. I'll tell you this, though. It costs the county of Sonoma $100,000 a year to try to figure out who is on vacation rental websites and who's not. Because right now, it's an opt-in. You pay if you choose to be a good citizen. And so that's the challenge, is that unless the taxes are collected at time of checkout, cities and counties don't see the revenue, whether if you live in Orange County or Mono County.
Okay. I've got problems. I mean, I got problems with this
Hey, there
bill
we go.
too, but I got other problems. I don't believe that it's a legitimate prohibition by cities to be passing these ordinances. I don't believe that whatever perverse idea that you have of Euclidean zoning, that you have a residential use and people are in there sleeping and having breakfast and then going to Pizza Hut to eat, that cities that are taking these actions are misguided. They're misguided by going in and prohibiting people who own their real property in fee simple from using their property. They're not overusing, they're not using it in an industrial basis for something. So I got problems at that threshold. And the bill goes off of that, to saying we're going to honor these laws. With that said,
Can I just,
I'd like to, okay.
just to respond to that, I hear you, and I really do appreciate the senator was talking with me about that. And I hear that concern, but that is also a decision on the local side. And we're not taking that up at the moment. If that law is thrown out, that's going to happen on the local level. But right now, there are laws on the books because city councils have decided for whatever reason, and I'm not sure why they would decide, that they decided to not have vacation rentals. And it is a bigger issue, but it's one for another conversation.
Okay, Senator Mendoza.
Mr. Chair, first of all, I want to commend the author for bringing this bill forward. Having served in local government capacity, I tell you this, not having the opportunity to really address concerns of our residents when their hands are tied with an issue like this, I think this bill is very necessary, and I would like to make a motion. I would like to move the bill.
Okay. There's a motion on the floor. Senator Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I view this as a work in progress, and I'm going to support it. But as I'm sitting here listening to the conversation, I want to try to separate the transit occupancy tax issue and reporting information and remitting that from the zoning compliance issue, which is this prohibition and this fine. And if, in fact, we require the hosting platforms to report the address, the total number of nights, and the amounts paid to the local jurisdiction, city or county, wouldn't the city be able to then take that and do its own zoning and ordinance enforcement as opposed to requiring the hosting platform to essentially do that by removing folks from the platform?
We have that option in the bill as well, that the actual local jurisdiction can do the collection on behalf.
Well, I don't mean the transit occupancy tax is different from zoning compliance and shutting people down, right?
Oh, yes, I'm
So
sorry.
I'm just wondering out loud, and I'm going to be quiet here in 2 seconds before my chair gets mad at me, but
I don't get mad at my members.
But maybe you should think about, as this work in progress moves forward, assuming it does,
Yeah, well,
whether that you should separate out the transit occupancy tax information reporting and collection issue from the zoning compliance issue. And maybe if the cities and counties get the information from the hosting platforms, why shouldn't they just be required to enforce their own zoning and ordinance as opposed to imposing that on the hosting platform to essentially do it by telling people they can't play in the sandbox?
Senator Roth has hit the nail on the head. And I'm going to use the example through the chair. Let's use the example of Sausalito. So let's use the example that it's ABC Vacation Rental Online Service. So what would happen is one of twofold. That ABC Online Vacation Rental Service can stop booking in that zip code. And the technology is out there right now simply to stop booking. Or two, they can turn over the information to for example, the city of Sausalito that has banned it completely, and their code enforcement will take care of it, not the online platform. That's it. So there is no local zoning enforcement by the online, platform. I think that's a bit of a red herring, because that is exactly what this bill would do. So
But
so
if
they
you
can
get
have
the
two
letter,
options.
if you get the letter, if Airbnb gets the letter, then he has to, within 30 days, remove, or he faces fines. And my suggestion is, as you move forward, maybe consider whether, if address, total number of nights, and amounts paid are reported to the city and county, just let the cities and counties decide to enforce or
That's
not
great.
their own ordinances, and decide how much enforcement they're going to have and how much they're willing to spend on it, and not make the hosting platform the policing agent, if in fact we require them to provide all the information necessary to do the enforcement.
No,
I'm supporting, I just ask you. to
No, that's great.
Okay, yeah,
No,
thank you.
I appreciate that.
Senator McGuire, thank you for bringing us such a complicated measure. I appreciate that.
Mr. Chair, can I just say a few items, just responding, just very
Yeah,
quickly?
okay. Yeah, I want to say some things.
Oh,
too.
I'm sorry, go ahead, sir, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, my background is, I come from San Jose. I was on the city council for 14 years. I was on the planning commission for 4.5 years. Before I did that, I was on the county board of supervisors for 12 years. And I'm an urban planner, that's my training, okay? So I think you got to steer clear of the planning stuff, basically, on this. I think you got to focus on the tax and the tax collection and make it as simple as possible, like you're buying a book, you're buying a room, make it simple, through the internet. And if you can do that with the bill, I think that's what you're trying to do. I think if you do that, I think we're going to have a happy medium here. This is not a tool to be used for zoning code enforcement or finding the retiree that wants to rent a room to help pay his retirement, or somebody wants to send their kid to college and rents a room and that kind of thing. We're not in that kind of game here, okay? But we do want to regulate transit and, occupancies, and transit occupancies have to be defined as vacation rentals or some kind of commercial aspect, as opposed to renting a room in your house to somebody, just simply renting a room to somebody in your house. So it's got to be more of a commercial aspect to the transaction, and that's what a transit occupancy tax is. It's a commercial transaction that occurs. And I think sticking to that and not getting immersed into the municipal planning and zoning laws, I think I'm hearing from members that's what they want, okay? I don't know if anybody disagrees, but that's essentially, if we can work in that regard, I think that's a good approach for this bill. I think people that you'd go into a commercial business and rent their rooms on a vacation basis, or sea ranch, or a simple room, if it's a commercial business, I don't think normal people would mind paying their taxes. It's somebody, everybody, if they're supposed to pay a tax, they should. And I believe if we passed a fair, simple law, that municipalities could produce a simple guideline for any homeowner that has a room to rent through this process, through the internet, they would be able to understand and follow the rules, and they would follow the rules. Any homeowner, if you're a city in Sacramento or Davis or wherever the city is, you would be able to follow that rule in a straightforward manner. I asked the internet company, I said, we have a lot of people that work in the internet. We have a lot of people that collect taxes in the internet. You should too. Figure it out. Work with the offer, just like everybody else does. It's not such a big deal. Everybody else does. Amazon does it. Figure it out. If I buy a car over the internet, I could do that too. So figure it out. It's a commercial transaction. If it's a commercial transaction, figure it out. I think that's, Senator McGuire, you may close. You have any comments in response?
No, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And again, I
Those
want
are
to.
my opinions.
No, that's great. I do want to say thank you to the committee, in particular the chair, for all the work. I want to say thank you to those that may currently be opposed to this bill and welcome a robust discussion in how we can work together. And that has been our message all along. And I also want to say thank you to those who are hosts that are here today. And I think that the sharing economy has kept people in their homes. I think that it has benefited this state economically. And all we ask is that they share in that prosperity with paying the tax. And we know that Airbnb, and I want to take a moment to say thank you to Airbnb, they are paying the tax in some cities. Let's make it standard across the state of California. And a few items is that, just want to remind, the bill's simple. You got a bed tax ordinance, you pay it. If you don't rent. I'm going to just skip very quickly. I think the distinct difference in regards to on the issue of privacy, and I welcome any conversation by representatives from the Sacramento Tax Collector's Office. There has never been a data breach when it comes to a local county tax collector in the state. So it's confidential, and if you are a host, you're already providing your private data on a 1099 to the IRS. And if you're paying your taxes right now at the county or city level, you're having to be able to remit that same information right now. So I
We have
appreciate.
models, by the way, the other cities that have already agreed to work with you, and I don't think they impose like some kind of onerous tax liability. They have dealt with that issue, is that correct? That Senator McGuire, I think that's kind of a prickly, I think if we can, that particular issue is how the, San Francisco and Malibu and San Jose have done it. They have dealt with that particular issue and made it have a clarified definition on that particular issue.
I won't take up too much of the committee's time talking through the specifics of those agreements. I will say if this bill intends to clarify the debate, which is currently being settled in the California Supreme Court over whether hotel taxes actually apply to companies like Airbnb or other platforms, I'm curious if that's the intent of the author or this committee, because we know many other companies will sue and sue vigorously to object unless local governments go to the ballot to expand the scope under Prop 218 of these taxes. However, despite that conversation, we have begun with a number of cities to voluntarily collect and remit and are increasing that program, particularly in cities like San Jose, where the chairman is from, which have very progressively and proactively embraced this activity and worked with our community and with other folks to sort the laws out.
Right.
And I would just state that we welcome and embrace the sharing economy. And I'm going to say the last time, I look forward to working with you on this issue. And on Prop 218, if we can just mention that for a second, if you take a look at the majority of the ordinances, the local laws that are passed in 431 cities and 55 out of 58 counties right now, they include short-term vacation rentals.
Yeah, that's true.
They do, but not internet companies.
Okay.
Well,
And so I would hope that we can come to the same agreement that San Jose, Malibu, and Chicago has. It's time for a hug.
okay.
Thank you, Senators.
We have a motion, we have a motion. Senator McGuire, do you have any additional comments?
No, thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody, for this good discussion. Let's call a question, please.
The motion is do pass and refer to the Committee on Rules. Senators Bell?
Aye.
Bell, I. Cannella? Allen? Allen, I. Bates? Gaines? Galgiani? Galgiani, I. Leyva?
Aye.
Leyva, I. McGuire?
Aye.
McGuire, I. Mendoza? Roth? Aye. Roth, I. Wachowski?
Aye.
Wachowski, I.
Okay. It's on call, thank you. Where are we now?
His last item, 13.
13, item 13, Senator.
Give you myself.
One more item and we're done. Bob, did you vote for that?